Good evening, everybody. It's great to have you here. My name is Carrie Lederer, and I'm the curator of exhibitions here at the Bedford Gallery, and I want to welcome you here to the gallery and to our current exhibition, The Jealous Curator. This exhibition is a first for us. We are so thrilled to have this opportunity to bring the blogosphere into the gallery, and what fun, what an honor it has been to work with the internationally renowned art blogger, The Jealous Curator.
So fancy.
Totally. After decades of looking at art and wishing she had done it, wishing she had thought of it, wishing she had made it, artist and designer Danielle Crissa decided to say it out loud, and in 2009, her blog was born, The Jealous Curator. As you know, she writes daily posts every day, and she's broadcasting and showcasing artists from around the world. Our Jealous Curator holds a BFA in the visual arts and a postgrad in design from Sheridan College in Ontario. In addition to publishing 2 books, Creative Block and Collage, both with Chronicle in 2014, she's also written magazine articles for Frankie and Anthology, and there's a 3rd book in the works, so stay tuned. Danielle has curated other shows as well. She's worked in Washington, D.C., in Vancouver, Canada, Chattanooga, Tennessee, in Los Angeles. She's been a guest speaker at Pixar and on Oprah.com. She's written guest blogs for a number of other bloggers locally and nationally, including SF Girl by the Bay, which is a real wonderful one, Style, West Elm, Etsy, Design Crush, Yellow Trace, and many, many more. The Jealous Curator blog itself has been covered in numerous publications, including Oprah Magazine, Sunset Magazine, Inside Out, Flow, The Vancouver Sun, Apartment Therapy, and Glamour Paris.
It was fancy.
To help shape this show, we have the honor of using Danielle's book, The Creative Block, as a launch pad to create what we have here. And so we have 22 artists in this exhibition, all of whom are working in a variety of media. And the quotes on the wall are all from the artists. I'm going to let Danielle talk with you more about all of that. But this exhibition was really designed to not only come in and take a look at art, not online, but in real life, but also enjoy the unblocking stations behind us. Have some fun, see some art, and make your mark. So with that, I'm going to get started. I am going to start by asking Danielle a number of questions, and then I'm hoping all of you will have some questions as well. So start to think about what you would like to hear from our Jealous Curator. But let's, for those of you who are really new to this idea of the Jealous Curator, Danielle, tell us, when did you start the Jealous Curator and why? Let's just start at the top.
Okay. I started the Jealous Curator in 2009. I have a background in advertising and design, and before that was my BFA. I was just saying this story can get really long. I'll try and keep it short. When I did my BFA, I was a painting major, and right before I graduated, I basically was in the middle of a 3-ring circus critique where my painting prof said in front of all of my peers in a critique, quote, "You should never paint again." And so I did it. And it really broke me. So I had sort of been the art kid growing up, and to be told, "You are not the art kid," he apologized after, but it's sort of like being hit by a car and then, being it's like damage is done. And so I took a year off, and I ended up going to design school because my sensibilities, I was just very designy anyway. So I went to design school, fit in perfectly, graduated top of my class, and off I went and became a designer and ignored art for about a decade. And I still made work at home, but I didn't tell anybody, I didn't show anybody. And then in 2006, my son was born, and so I decided to take a few years off and be with him. And when he was 2.5, I thought, well, maybe now is my time to get back into art. So I started, I always joke that Charlie was born, but the internet had also been born in that time. And so I started, looking up artists just for inspiration, and I found thousands of them, and I always say that I sort of had this 50-50 reaction where 50% of me was so inspired and excited, and the other 50% of me felt completely crushed, and what was the point? Everything had been done in every color, and so I just did nothing. My bookmarks list grew and grew and grew with all these artists that I love, and my depression grew and grew and grew. And my husband, who happens to be a social media strategist, said, I think you should start a blog. And he said, you're a really visual person, turn this bookmarks list into something visual. And he said, there's a funny thing about jealousy. When you keep it inside, it becomes toxic and eats you alive. When you say it out loud, it becomes admiration, and you can turn this whole thing on its head. So the Jealous Curator was born, and I started writing every couple of days whenever Charlie was napping and whenever I found something. And but then suddenly I started getting followers and became much more type A about, the creative director in me came out, and I started writing every day. And so I still do it almost 6 years later. One daily post every day, just a paragraph about why I love it, and a link back to that artist. That was a long answer, sorry.
That was a good answer. But and I have a feeling a lot of folks that are here tonight are wondering about how you do it. Like, was it difficult to get set up and designed, and how do you get things running? And I wanted to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts. So, things like, what platform do you use? How do you design it? Is there a template? So just talk a little bit about how you make that whole blog happen.
It's actually really easy. They make it very easy for you. I have a WordPress template. You can just go in, and they have so many hundreds that you can pick from. And you can customize them a little bit. I'm a graphic designer, so I went crazy and totally customized mine. And my husband used to be a programmer, so he could jump in there and do that. So if you know anybody that does that kind of thing, they can help you customize it even more. But it's very straightforward. I'm going to, if we want to at some point, take you through what it looks like putting up a blog post. It's so simple, and the dashboard is really, really easy, and you just click, 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 publish, and off you go. So I don't like technology. Everybody thinks because I'm a blogger I'm into technology. Oh my God, I'm so not into technology. And it's really quite easy. So yeah, just WordPress is what I use, and lots of templates to pick from.
And would you recommend for a younger blogger to just go ahead and pick a template versus trying to design something by hand? Keep it simple.
Yeah. Like, even mine is a template. I just altered it.
Okay.
So like, there's all these pieces that make up, like, it's like Lego, right? There's like the header, and there's this, and there's this, and you can just take the colors that they've already got. But I, of course, had to strip that down and put my own thing in. And so my husband knew how to like swap out their pieces for my pieces.
Got it.
So it's not very hard. If you have anybody that knows that kind of thing, they can help you, or you can just take the template and run with it, because they're quite pretty.
And what about building your community? How do you do that? That seems like a big piece.
Yeah, for me, I never intended to build an audience. It really was just therapy for me. There's lots of ways that you can do it. Social media, of course, is huge. I was just talking with a woman in the audience about, I think what was easy for me, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, is that when you write about somebody else, like, I would write about an artist, and then I'd email them and say, hey, I wrote about you on my blog. And, I had 4 posts up. And artists love being written about. So then they would tell 100 friends that they'd been written about on this blog, and then 100 people would come back, and now they're following me. So every day I wrote about somebody else, and then you would get all of their audiences. So it's really a matter of social media. The key in social media is social. It's all about being social and sharing. And another great way to do it is to collaborate with other blogs and say, could I write a guest post for you? I started writing for SF Girl by Bay. Does anybody know her? Victoria Smith. She's in San Francisco. And so I started writing a weekly column for Victoria. She had tens of thousands of followers when I had like 52. And so, I would write on her blog, and it would be, signed Jealous Curator, and Jealous Curator would be a link back to my site. So if they liked what I wrote there, then it would come back to what I was doing on my site. So reaching out and being social is the best thing that you can possibly do. And it, some people say, well, I don't, I approach these giant blogs and they don't want me to write for them, and which makes sense. But you can always reach out to them and ask, would you like to write for me? Just, one guest post. Or you can have friends that also have smaller blogs. You know, you all start writing for each other, and suddenly, you know, your audience grows exponentially very, very quickly.
Yeah. You know, just circling back to that, your mention of submissions, you must get an enormous amount of submissions. And I was thinking about a whole number of questions around that. I'm wondering, how many of these do you actually get to see in real life ultimately? And are you able to, in terms of the submissions that you get, are you able to look at everything? Do you have to just, you know, ultimately there's so much you have to skip over things. After reviewing hundreds and hundreds of submissions, what percentage are you able to post?
Well, now, so 6 years in, I get about 50 submissions a day probably. And it breaks my heart that I can't write about all of them. My tagline is, "Damn, I wish I thought of that." And so that's still how I judge work. Like if it's a piece that I think, "Oh man, I wish I'd made that," that's what I write about. So I do get a lot of submissions, you know, and it's so subjective. And if it's not my taste, they can be the sweetest person in the world, and it breaks my heart that I can't write about them, but it really has to be my taste. So I don't see them in person, these submissions. It's rare for me to come across something in person. I live in a teeny little town in Canada, so it's not exactly the gallery hub of the world. So everything I see is digital. I'd say, so say I get 50 a day for a week, I probably write about 3 or 4 of them out of that whole week. And I used to write back to everyone and say yes or no, and now it's just like that would literally be my full-time job. And so I don't. I post on my Facebook page every now and then, you know, just so you know, if you have submitted something, I look at everything. I look at literally everything, which is also a full-time job, but I do look at everything, I bookmark everything, but I don't write about everything. And I can't write everybody back anymore.
So you get an enormous amount of submissions. Besides everything that comes to you without being asked, are you out looking at other sites, or where else do you scout?
I scout everywhere. Pinterest is a really good source. No matter what you're blogging about, really, Pinterest is a great source for everything. I go to the other art blogs, they come to me. The important thing when you do that is that you give them credit at the bottom. You know, if I find something on boom.com with 7 O's is a really great art site. He's in Vancouver, actually. And if I find something on Boom at the end, you know, I'll write my own thing, but at the end I'll say via Boom and link back there. So, and if I find something on a great Pinterest board, I'll say via so-and-so's Pinterest board and link to them, because again, it's that social thing, you know, I would expect them to do the same thing for me. So I find it there. Pinterest, you all know, the internet is like a rabbit hole. So, you know, I might find an artist that I love, and then they've got like links on the side of, you know, 5 of their favorite artists, and suddenly you're off down that track, and then they've got 5 friends, and, you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, you've got a bookmarks list that's, you know, 20 deep. So I generally try and be organized enough that I've got at least a couple of posts ready ahead of time. I'm not one of those people where like the full week is done, ever. Except when I was coming here, I got really organized because I knew I'd be busy. But there are nights when it's 2 in the morning and I still don't have a post for tomorrow. So I keep clicking until I find one. And I always say that it's a punch to the creative gut. When I find something and I'm like, oh, that's good, that's tomorrow's post. And until I get that feeling, there is no post.
Yeah, perfect. I think a lot of us have interest in blogging, and we like the idea and want to be involved in it, and we also are drawn or stretched in many other ways. We have jobs, we have kids, you know, we're pushed and pulled. Talk a little bit about time management and you know, what this looks like for you. Is this a full-time job? Is it a half-time? You know, talk with us about what it takes to do this.
None of you should take my advice on time management. I am so tired. Jealous Curator could totally be a full-time job. I am also a graphic designer with a full-time job, and I have an 8-year-old. So I have 2 full-time jobs and an 8-year-old. What I've had to start doing, I had a meltdown, breakdown, crying freaking out when I was working on this, because I was working on, and you know, this was a big deal for me. I couldn't believe I got to write a book. I was so excited, and I really wanted it to be so, so good, but I had all of my other commitments, and I couldn't figure out how to do it all, and so my husband and I worked from a home office, and I just started crying. And he was like, okay, computers off, phones off, let's go. And we went for a long drive and talked all about it. We had a really big talk, and ever since, that was a few years ago, and now this is what I do. I break up my day and my week into chunks. So I'm working on the 3rd book right now. I work on it all day Thursday. Thursday is book day. I don't work on the graphic design. Greg picks Charlie up from school. We get takeout. Thursday is book day, because otherwise I just would never work on it, and then I panic that I should be working on it all the time, and I'm never working on it. And same when I'm working on a design project, it'll be like, you know what, Tuesday from 9 till 12, Facebook gets turned off, everything's turned off, and I'm only working on this thing from 9 to 12. When Charlie gets home from school, we're making cupcakes from 2:30 till, you know, 5, and dinner prep and everything, and I just have to break my day up like that. Otherwise, I feel scattered. The mental list in my head is so long, and there are so many things that if I don't compartmentalize like that, I just feel like a crazy person.
Well, and you also volunteer in the school.
I
and
volunteer
you
at
have a little
Charlie's
startup. You want to talk about the startup just a quick minute?
Yeah, my day job, I work for a startup out of New York, and so startups are like 24/7, and I'm the creative director, and it's called Greatly, great.ly, go check it out. It's sort of like Etsy flipped on its head a little bit. And it's very, very demanding. I love it so much. I was saying to a couple of women before we started that everything I do is so exciting and such a great opportunity that I don't say no to anything. Because how can you? Like, Carrie calls, you don't say no to this. And then, do you know the Land of Nod, that store in Chicago? So they called, there's an interesting story about some work over there about Land of Nod that I'll tell you in a little bit. But they called and asked if I'd be their chief curator for their art collection. So you say yes, you know, and then you just don't sleep. But I can't say no to anything because it's all just so exciting right now.
It's all good.
Yeah.
You know, I learned the other day when we were talking with Danielle that she's posted almost 2,000 artists. So that's a lot of work. That's a lot of artists. You've looked at a lot. When you think about the whole of it, what are you attracted to and why? And do you think there's an aesthetic voice to the blog?
I think there is, and it's actually so funny when you come in here, you can totally see this aesthetic, right? And that's why I love this show so much. I love every single thing in here. What it is it's what I wish I was making. So I have a real thing for nostalgia, which you can see from the campers and the paintings over the water skiing paintings over here. I loved craft growing up. So I have a real thing about craft and fine art crashing into each other. So ceramics, but not traditional ceramics that are a little bit weird and dark, like Amanda Smith's pieces, or things that incorporate embroidery, but in a really edgy way, like Jenny Hart. There's a topless embroidered lady over there. And so I didn't really know I had an aesthetic, but then when you scroll through the site, it's like everything sort of has this feel to it. I love little hits of neon. That's how I found you guys, actually, was the neon show from last year. So there is a general color palette that I always seem drawn to, and then, yeah, this sense of nostalgia or slight, craft, and I love pop art. So, it all kind of mixes together. Oh, and I have a real thing for things that are kind of creepy and sweet. I write a lot about creepy and sweet all mixed together. I like things with a bit of an edge.
That's a great mashup.
Yeah, it's quite a mashup. But isn't it weird, like how many things did I just list, yet they all kind of go together? I don't know how.
Yeah, they do. Before we open the floor, do you have any other tips you want to provide to wannabe bloggers?
Yes, I wrote a list.
Oh, good.
So a lot of people see blogs as like get rich quick, or like, it's not. If you're going to write a blog, don't try and figure out what the trends are and write about something that would fit into that. Write about something that you really, really care about. Like if you really care about rock gardens, write about rock gardens. And then you're going to attract this like-minded community around you who also really loves rock gardens. And there's a lot of people that will start design blogs because that's the trendy, cool thing. But it's like, if you don't really, really care about it, you're not going to be committed. You're going to dread working on it. Ultimately, you're not going to work on it. But I was telling some of the women today at the Guild that I'm going to take a week off at Christmas just because I'm burnt out and I want to be with Charlie, but I know I'm going to be a little bit itchy because I hate not posting. I have this like obsession because I'm so obsessed with contemporary art and everything that I'm doing that it's really hard not to post. So that's the first thing. Find something that you really, really care about, and then blogging's easy because you want to write about it. You want to search for content. Pen names are a really good thing. A lot of people are a little bit, you know, they've got their life, they're a mom, or they're a professional, or they're both, or and they feel like, oh, but you know, what if my colleagues saw this, and what if it's not very good at first? So I don't really want people to know I'm doing this, which is exactly why my blog is called The Jealous Curator, and there is no mention of Danielle Crissa on it anywhere, because when I started, I was an at-home mom in a suburb outside of Vancouver, and I thought, who the hell is going to take me seriously as a contemporary art writer? They're going to lump me into the mommy blogger category, which is a great category, but I just didn't want to be in it. And so I just called it The Jealous Curator. And I didn't say where I was from or anything. And for the longest time, people thought I was a man in London. Because I wrote the Canadian way. I'd write color with a U. And so I get emails all the time, Dear Mr. Curator. Sexist. Anyway, Dear Mr. Curator, and then, you know, oh, I assume you're in London, and I was like, okay. And like, I just never corrected anybody. And then for a long time, people thought I was in New York or San Francisco, and I just never clarified. You even thought I was from Portland. And so it doesn't really matter in this day and age where you're from, so I just never said it. And I never really talk about Charlie because he's not a contemporary artist. So having a pen name is a really fun way to be anonymous. Write whatever the hell you want to write, and nobody knows it's you. So I highly recommend that. And there's this cool kind of mystery that comes, and then people want to know, and it kind of creates this buzz that you don't even really mean to create, which is great. No one is going to read your blog when you start, just so you know. It is like writing into a vacuum, because nobody knows you're there. How would they? My husband set up Google Analytics on my site so that I could see where people were coming from. So for the first 4 or 5 months, I'd go and check, and it would be 6 views, and 3 would be my dad. 2 were Greg from work, and 1 was me uploading the post. And it would be like that for months. And then one day I went in to check, and there were 47 views. This is about 5 months in, and there were 23 of them were from New York, and I don't know anyone in New York. And so suddenly, people were reading. But for those 5 months, I still wrote all the time. So you know, don't give up. Don't feel like, oh, nobody's reading this. What's the point? Nobody's going to for a while until you start doing that social stuff, until you start reaching out and sharing it.
It's the TV.
It's kind of nice in a way for you to have that time where nobody's reading it so that you can figure out what your voice is. Oh, when I first started, figuring out your voice, when I first started, I thought, well, it's an art blog. And I minored in art history, so I thought, well, I should sound like an art textbook. So I was like, society's view on it, blah, blah, blah. And I showed my husband, and I said, what do you think? And he was like, oh, no. Nope, that's really bad. I did the same thing when I started writing the book, because I thought, well, I'm an author now. And my editor said, no, that's really bad. And so it took me a while to find my voice. And my husband said, the only difference between you and every other blog out there, art blog out there, so this is the same for you and every other rock garden blog out there, the only difference is you. So your voice needs to come through. Your taste needs to come through. That's what's going to set you apart. So for me, I write the way I talk. So if I see a piece of work and think, oh, sweet Jiminy, I love that, I write, oh, sweet Jiminy. And then now people know my voice. And when Chronicle approached me, and I wrote the first deliverable as society's view on my editor called. She never calls, she emailed. She called and said, yeah, we hired the Jealous Curator. We don't know who wrote this. And I was like, oh, right. So it's really important to find your voice and just be true to who you are. And again, it makes it so much easier to write every day when it's just you writing about the thing you love. And then this is a graphic design thing. Photos, when you upload the photos, so every template will have like a set width. So mine is 584. That's my set pixel width. And some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. make all of your photos the exact same size. Always scale them to be that size, because it's almost like reading a magazine then it's just like nice, you know, you've got this beautiful row of photos. A lot of people will just upload whatever photos they've got, so as a viewer, it's sort of like big, small, you know, some are centered, some aren't, and it's just a bit jarring, and people don't know why it's jarring, they just know that it is. And so when they come in and everything is sized the same and it's really easy to visually digest, it's much prettier looking. And then when you write, really, blog posts should only be about a paragraph. Your readers, chances are, follow 200 other blogs, and they don't have time to come in and read, you know, your essay on rock gardens. They have time to pop in, read a paragraph, and get out. And and it's nice for them to know why they're coming to your blog, right? So sometimes some blogs can get all over the place, and one day you're writing about this, and the next thing you're writing about this. And it makes it harder for people to follow because they can't predict what they're going to find when they get there. So if they know, if I go to rockgardens.com, I'm going to get photos, beautiful photos of this rock garden. I'm going to get this, you know, little quip, and I'm going to get a link off to somewhere that's, you know, interesting to me. They know why they're coming. Letting them know why then they'll know what they're coming there for, and then chances are they'll come there more often. Those are all my tidbits.
Those are good. Those are good. I had one other question, but I think what we'll do is see if there are folks out there who have a question.
Gosh, I have lots of questions, but I'll just throw out one. And I've heard this from other people, but I love your take. So the difference between a website and a blog. But so can you just talk a little bit about that?
Did everybody hear the question? Difference between a website and a blog. What's the difference?
Where do you go?
Well, a blog is when you can update it every day, and it is more like a journal, right? Websites are a little bit more static, and so it would just be your portfolio and your about section and whatever, and it's not really something that you add to every day. And blogs, you can often, it's more that you do it with the template so that you are just adding content every day and it just scrolls below. You can kind of have the best of both worlds. It sounds like you kind of have the capability of doing that. And like with my blog, it's technically a blog because of how the template's set up. I've actually got built-in pages on the side. So it is kind of a website too, right? Because I do have static pages. I've got, you know, so having the best of both worlds is kind of good. A place where you can be updating constantly, but that you can have pages like an About Us page or, you know, things like that. So it sounds like you probably already have it.
Yeah, and then the other question though, I give you so much credit in how you built and all that. You're obviously growing and you're wearing a lot of hats. So why aren't you, or maybe in the future you are thinking about doing this, is finding professional commercial representation from a company or an agent that can handle a lot of things that I know you're handling yourself. I mean, doing this and the Chicago, all those things, the details involved and logistics involved are, I know, it's crazy. So how come you're still trying to wear all the hats yourself?
Because I'm a control freak. Yep, that's the end of that answer. My husband is hopefully going to start doing that more for me. We met at work. We've always worked together. We're a really good team, and he's sort of seeing that, you know, I'm struggling, and so he's taken on some admin stuff that, you know, was kind of bogging me down. And ultimately, I looked into getting a literary agent for this next book, and I ended up being a control freak and doing it myself. And so, yeah, there's some therapy issues. Yeah.
Does the Jealous Curator also have a Facebook page? And then how do you combine those? How do you use it?
Yes, she asked if I have a Facebook page. I have everything, man. I've got Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook. Facebook has been huge for me. For the longest time, I was at around 2,000 followers, and there wasn't really very much going on. This is the great thing about being married to a social media strategist, because he said, I never really know what to put on all of them. It's like, what do I tweet? And what do I say on Facebook? It seems like I'm talking a lot. And it's like, I don't really, do people care? Like, And he said, yes, they do. So he said, because I have such a visual brand, my whole thing is about art. So he said, on Facebook, just put up one beautiful shot every day of who you posted about and link it back to the post. So I was like, okay. So I started doing that about, I'm going to say just shy of 2 years ago. It was right when I got the book deal-ish. So yeah, about 2 years ago, I was at 2,000 fans. I think tomorrow I'm going to cross 119,000 in 2 years. And it's because people like a big giant photo. They can like it, they can share, they don't have to digest anything. I make them really wide. You can get tricky on Facebook, and if you make your photos, instead of tall and skinny, if you make them wide, they fill up the whole news feed. So a big, giant, beautiful piece of contemporary art rolls through your news feed, people are gonna like it. As opposed to, a tiny little thing.
You don't put text with that.
I'll usually put like some little tease about what the post is about and then a link back to the site. But honestly, I've had so many people lately who I know have said, oh, you have a site? Like they just follow me on Facebook. They don't even know that I have a blog. And do you guys know Lisa Congdon? She's an artist, she's from Oakland. She's in the show around that yellow wall on the other side. And we were talking about it last night. We have a very similar life right now. And she said, do you think we need our blogs? And I was like, yeah, it's weird because they're kind of this weird hub. They're like this core that holds it all together, but people are coming less and less to that. People come to my pin boards and they come to my Facebook and they go to my Instagram, and so they don't necessarily always go back to the blog anymore. It's changing. It's starting to change. And then you can use each of those social media platforms for different things. Like that's what I was saying to my husband, am I supposed to say the same thing in all these places? And he said, no. So what I've sort of figured out on my own is that I don't talk about Charlie, I don't really talk about my life, and I thought that was cool until I started doing events like this, and a lot of women I met were like, but I'm a mom too, and I kind of want to know that you're a mom. That you're doing all of this and you've got a kid. Like, that would be more inspiring to me than assuming that you don't. And so I use Instagram for that. So every now and then there's pictures of Charlie. I did a half marathon in October, so I posted a picture of doing that, just so that people can see my life a tiny bit. But I don't want to saturate them with it, so that's what I use Instagram for. Facebook, I never post about my life. Twitter, I never say anything about my life, but I use Instagram for that. So it's kind of just figuring out, and also you don't have to be on all of these things. It's freaking exhausting. So you don't have to be on all these social media platforms. You can kind of pick the ones that work best for you, that feel most comfortable, and then figure out how to use them for you. How much of your life do you want to expose? Do you want to just talk about rock gardens, or do you want to show your rock garden and, and teach that way? And so it's just a matter of figuring out what you're comfortable with, really.
This is all Jealous Curator.
It's all Jealous Curator.
It's not yours.
It's not mine. I have a Danielle Cursive Facebook page, but it's just for my friends and family, and then so Jealous Curator is just for Jealous Curator. I try and keep it very separate. Mm-hmm.
I noticed you were on Twitter too, so how do you know when you're going to put something on there as opposed to blogging about something?
Well, my blog is the core. So I wake up in the morning, I do my post, and then I wait until 8:40, because for some reason at 8:40 that's when I get the most likes. So I wait till 8:40, and then I post on Facebook, and then I go over to Twitter, and I post the same thing on Twitter, and Twitter now allows you to put photos, and that really changes it. If you put a photo with your tweet, you get way more retweets, because people are visual. They don't read. So I now put something visual and link it back to the post. Facebook links back to the post. Everything links back to the post. And then on Instagram, I will pick one of the, usually my posts have 5 or 6 pieces of art. I'll pick my favorite one. Actually, you know what I do that's really sneaky now? I put up my post. My mornings are so busy. I put up my morning post. I go and pin everything in that post to Pinterest. This is at 8 a.m. I go get my coffee. I come back. I go to Pinterest. I see which one is the most popular, which one's been pinned the most. Whichever one's been pinned the most, I make my Facebook post, because I know it's the popular vote. And I've tried a few times an experiment where I'm like, oh, I can't believe that one got the most pins on Pinterest. I'm going to just see, because actually this one's my favorite. Quiet day on Facebook. So later that afternoon, I'll be like, oh, and actually here's one more from today's post, and it'll go through the roof. And it's like, ah, damn, I should have listened to Pinterest. Like, Pinterest is always right. So, it's, you know, again, it's exhausting because there's just so many levers and whatever, but in a way it's kind of fun, you know, like it's a bit of an experiment, and now I've got a system. Now I just wake up, I get Charlie ready for school, I post a thing, I go get my coffee, he goes off to school, I come back, I do this, and then, you know, over this, and I'm done by 10.
Do you have any advice for an individual artist who has a blog, what she should do or he should do?
For promoting?
As far as, you know, who's blogging and wants to get seen. I mean, because obviously you're doing a lot of variety.
Yeah. So that question was for an artist that has their own blog, how do they sort of get out there? And I was saying it is easier for me because I'm writing about other people, right? And artists have a hard time promoting themselves. I would say reaching out to other blogs is the way to go. Having a Facebook page, you can still do the same thing. You can still post one of your pieces every day and just get it out there. Pin your own stuff to Pinterest. You can do all that stuff for yourself. The huge thing is collaborating, I find. There's a lot of artists that will get together and write for each other or post about each other. And you know, once you kind of create these communities, blogging, anything online is exponential. As soon as one person sees it, then 4 people see it, then 8 people see it. So you can't stay in your own little bubble. And if you just post every day on your blog, it won't be enough. Because people won't know that that blog is there to find it. Did that answer the question? Yeah. Oh, there's a question over there that I haven't, yeah, I saw your hand go up way long time ago.
Is there actually any money to make in the blog world, like by advertising or anything?
Yes, you can make money from blogging, from advertising. It's changing a little bit right now. There used to be a ton of money in it. It's starting to go more sponsored posts now, but you have to be kind of one of the big guys, right? So I have personally, when I was designing in an ad agency, I was the head of online marketing. If I never see another banner ad again in my life, it'll be too soon. So I never wanted advertising on my site. I never wanted to do sponsored posts. It just didn't felt a bit icky to me, to be honest. And I don't begrudge anybody that does it. It's fine. It's how they pay their rent. That's fine. I just never wanted to do it. I always viewed my blog, because I do like money. If you want to leave some up here. I do like money. I like to get paid, but I always viewed my blog as a calling card, like almost like a living online resume for who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I knew that one day money would come. And just now, money is starting to come, like money from the book and, you know, like for curating shows or for speaking engagements or things like that. I mean, it's not a ton. I still pay my mortgage with my creative director design job. But, you know, money is coming. There are lots of ways to monetize, and you still can sell ads. It's just changing. It's a really weird time because that used to be the way. You could make a ton of money. Which is why I was saying the get-rich-quick thing about starting blogs. Like a lot of people were starting blogs figuring, well, I'll just make a ton of money with the advertising dollars. And people were, but now it's crashing. So the big bloggers are trying to figure out what to do. Yes?
I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach, so I'm really still mad at that professor here.
Me too.
Oh my gosh. And of course work with people trying to get over negative comments that were made to them young and still trying to get over it. So do you want to, do you have any time for your own personal art?
There's 5 of my pieces in this show, because she made me. Yes, I do collage work. I've had some major, like crazy aha moments over the last few months since the book came out, and which I'll tell you about after, because I won't make everyone listen to them. But I've realized I'm a collage artist, and that's okay, you know. And I've started making a lot more of my work. The only problem is, as far as priorities go, I do put it at the very, 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 very bottom, which is terrible. I don't know why I do that. But it's always one of those things where it's like I have a Sunday afternoon where there's nothing going on, and then that's when I'll make art. But I don't, the blocks of time I was talking about, I don't give any blocks to it, which is a really good way to hide out from doing it. So when things like this come up, where I'm forced to make stuff, it's actually really good because then I have a deadline and people are expecting things and I have to do it. So I should probably do that to myself, but I don't.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point in time, how do you find new artists? Do you go looking for them, or do they just send you stuff and then you pick from what they send you?
Both. I find more of them by looking and a fraction of them by what gets sent. Yeah, I spend hours and hours and hours looking. I spend a lot of time on Pinterest. I love Saatchi online, Saatchi art. There's so much good stuff on there. And so I find a lot of work on there, and it's so funny. And I always give them link love. I always give them credit back to their site. And they recently reached out to do a collaboration with me, and I might be curating a show in LA with them. So it's all like, it's very karma. Like you put it out, it comes back. And, my husband always says, like, you're so positive, there's no way you're not going to get positive back. And if you're snarky, like the art world can be pretty snarky, if you put that out, you're going to get it back. And so I only put out positive, so I generally get it back, which is great. I saw a question over here.
Yes, I am very interested in your aha moments.
Oh.
In the book and deciding what black artists you want to share.
So she said she'd like to hear the aha moment. Do you want to hear it? Okay, so I was a painting major. The stupid prof said you should never paint again, but I listened, went on to design, and I started doing collage. And collage never counted as art for me because it was easy. I find it incredibly easy, probably because I'm a graphic designer, right? So it's about composition, it's about moving elements around. Very easy for me. So to me, I think art's supposed to be heart-wrenching and horrible maybe. So I never counted collage as art. It was just like a thing I did. So creative block comes out, I'm reading all of these, interviews from all these people, I'm running around the country preaching about how to get out of a block. Meanwhile, I haven't painted in 19 years. I thought, oh my God, what a hypocrite. So I thought, right, I have to start painting again. So I went back to the scene of the crime. I was doing a book event in Victoria, which is where I went to school, University of Victoria. So I went back to the art store where I bought all of my first year paint. I thought, I'm going to go back there and buy paint there. So I went back there and walked up to the girl to get some help, and my book was the featured book of the month at the till. And I was like, well, that is awesome. And she was like, and I sort of said, well, and that's mine. And so she, you're the jealous curator? Oh my God. And she gathered everybody around and they all came. So I said, well, I need to buy paint. And they all knew why. Like, they were like, oh, is it because of it, And so, it's because of that prof, isn't it? And so, I went and got the paint, and then that night, I went and spoke at my Victoria event. Now, I've done this talk all over the place, and I always tell the full story of this crit, which I haven't told you guys, but I told the full story, and everyone gasps and whatever. But I was doing this talk in Victoria. So, I'm done. It's about 80 people. I finish. This guy walks up to me and leans in my ear and goes, was it Rob? And I just got goosebumps because that's who it was. It was this teacher named Rob. And I was like, yes. And he's like, I was in your class. I remember that happening. And I was like, oh my God. He goes, yeah, I became an architect because that asshole told me I couldn't make art either. And then this other girl came up and said, so Neil and I are chatting. We didn't really remember each other, so we're chatting. And this girl comes up and said, excuse me, was it Rob? And we were like, yeah. And she said, I became a landscape architect because that guy told me whatever. And so we all bonded. And then, so anyway, I went home with my paints, and I tried to paint, and it was awful, awful, awful. And I cried, and I was like, I suck. And, I was trying to share this with my audience, so they're like, post your paintings. And I was like, no way in hell. And so it was really traumatic, actually, and awful. And then, so I was doing some more traveling, and I went to Toronto. And my collage book had just come out, which is basically, it's just a really pretty book of collage. And so I went out for dinner with 3 of the collage artists from the book who I'd never met in person, and they were in Toronto, so we went out for dinner. And we had this huge talk, and I never talk about my own work, and I was having this back brain moment. I thought, you know what? I need to talk about collage with these people. So I brought up, oh, you know, collage is so easy, and when the collage came out, I started getting emails from all these people going, oh, I'm a painter, I'm a photographer, I've always wanted to do collage, but it's so hard. I was like, hard? Snip, snip, glue, glue, like how hard is that? And so I was telling these guys that, which is totally insulting to them because they're collage artists, but anyway, so I'm telling them that, and they're like, it's not easy, you're just good at it. And then I flew back to Vancouver to do an event in Vancouver, and there's a shop there called Collage. It's this beautiful little, where kids can go and do workshops. And so I was meeting with the owner of that because I was going to do a workshop. So we start talking, and I tell her my big epiphany that maybe collage is hard, and I'm just good at it. And so I tell her the critique story. And she's the only one that has ever asked. She said, well, what did the work look like that he criticized? And I said, well, it was these canvases, and I had cut pieces out and sewn them back on, and then I used paper and glued it on to get texture. And she goes, so a collage? And I was like, holy crap, I've been a collage artist my whole life and I didn't even know. And it was just I felt like I'd lost 100 pounds off my shoulders. I was just like, get the glue, I've got to make stuff. And that was right when it was time to start making the work for this show, and it was so liberating. And it's just I threw the paint away. It's I never was a painter. I've been a collage artist this whole time. And so my name is Danielle, and I'm a collage artist. So it's been this book is about other people, but I've had the craziest epiphanies for my own work, which is so exciting, which is what the 3rd book is about. It's sort of all of the things I've learned, the 10 truths about being a creative person, and it's everything that I have learned from this experience. It's stories like that just keep happening over and over that just reaffirm this theory that we're all in this thing together. Everyone feels like this. There's nothing wrong with that. You just embrace it and move on.
All right.